Hi, I'm Jody. I'm with Quilt and Peace, and I'm here to share with you my JAABA and how I use it for appliquing. On my previous video, you were introduced to the JAABA and the different options that you can use the JAABA for. And this video, I'd like to share with you the different ways to applique using the JAABA. Okay, with this video I'm going to share with you two different methods of preparing for applique. First is a freezer paper method. I've got a pattern here. It's a heart. It's a simple pattern to work with, easy to learn on. You get your points and your intern points, and you get a rounded edge and you get a bit of a straight edge. So it's a perfect pattern to practice on. The first step is to take your freezer paper, and as you can see, I've pre-drawn the heart onto the matte side of the freezer paper. The shiny side is the side that you'll put on your fabric. You put it on the face of the fabric. So what I've got here is a heart that I have ironed on the freezer paper. As you can see, the freezer paper stays real well. And I've taken my fabric and I've trimmed it. As you can see, it's not perfect. There's a narrow side and a little bit wider side, but I trim as I go when I needle turn. I haven't cut down into here. That you save until you get to the very end, or to this point. So I just rough cut it out. Anywhere from 1/4 inch to 3/16 of an inch is a good size to have around your shape. With freezer paper, I find that as I'm working it, it does have a tendency to want to peel off a little. So I do put clover applique pins in my project. And I would pin this project onto a background fabric. And I might pin it a couple more times. But basically, this shape and this piece is ready to start appliquing. With the needle turn, you basically are turning this edge under, and the freezer paper gives you a nice edge to be able to turn under and see where you're going. The next step that I actually prefer, the next method, is a new one to me, and it's called back basting applique. And basically you take your pattern, as I have here, and you would take your background fabric and you would lay your background fabric on top of the pattern and you'd trace it. With all of these tracings, if you have a light background, that's helpful. If you have a light box, that's great. If you don't have a light surface or a light box, you can go to a window and put your pattern up against the window and then trace it that way. With dark fabrics as your background fabric, you can purchase from stationery stores white or yellow carbon paper. It's actually a graphite paper that will allow you to see your lines. When I mark my fabric for light colors, I use a friction pen. You could use a pencil. Either works because it's on the back of your background fabric. Also, if your pattern has a certain shape or a certain direction, you'll want to mirror image your paper copy so that when you draw it on the back of your fabric background, you're doing it in the reverse. So when you actually get done, you're going to, I should say, you're going to baste. Basting is a running stitch. It's not a real tight stitch, it's just a running stitch. And with the running stitch and the basting, I never put a knot in it, because when I flip it over here, you'll see I've basted this piece of fabric onto my background. It's just a square, and if you were to hold this up against the light, you would be able to see the shadow of the fabric back there, so you would know that you've got a big enough piece for the heart shape. And as I said, I basted, and now you can see my white basting stitches. What you would do at this point is I'm going to trim this fabric off, just the excess, just to get rid of a little bit of it. What I'm going to do is just roughly trim this. I'm just trying to get rid of some excess. I'll trim it down closer as I get to it, but it makes it easier not to have that extra bulk. Also, when I basted with a large needle, and I basted with hand quilting thread. It's a thicker thread. It's going to leave bigger holes. The whole idea is that this basting is going to leave holes in the fabric where I need to turn under. What I'm going to do then is, in my introductory video, I introduced my JAABA. The JAABA is a surface that I applique on. Now that I've got my project ready to applique, I'm going to take my JAABA and I'm going to place it on the 3 fingers on my non-sewing hand. I'm going to take my index and thumb finger. That's going to help hold my project on the top of the surface. When I take my project, I roll it so that it goes into my hand, into the palm part of my hand. And find my needle here. What I'm going to do is pull these basting stitches out. I'm just picking this long stretch. It's easier to start your applique on a long stretch. I'm also going to trim this just a little closer because I really don't want to have to turn in any more than I have to. So I like mine fairly close, but some fabrics will start to fray or unravel if you get too close. The next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to turn this under, and I don't know if the camera can see this, but there's little teeny holes along there where my needle had those basting stitches, and it gives me an edge. Also, it's hard probably for you to see, but right under along there are the holes in my background fabric. So if I use my needle, and sometimes I switch my needle in my hand this way because I want to get...
Pause for a second. Okay.
Okay, so I've got this long straight stretch where I've got it tucked in where I need it tucked in. And then, instead of hiding my knot in the back, I go between my stitches here and I go where the fold is, right under my applique piece. So that's where I start my applique. And then I'm going to take that and go down right in front, right where my thread came out. I'm going to go into my background fabric and I'm going to turn up. when I turn up, I'm sliding this project off of my JAABA. The JAABA's under here, and this bent edge gives me an edge that my needle goes parallel with the edge, going vertically straight up. Okay, I'm going to take a second here and cut this basting thread to get it out of my way. Grab my needle up here. And so what I'm doing with my stitch is I'm going down where I came up, and I'm sliding with my thumb so that that stitch goes right into the edge and side of my fold. What I'm going to do is continue making these stitches, and as you can see, I don't have to keep tucking under. I've got this long stretch. I'm slowly working with my thumb to slide my project towards the edge of my JAABA. Now as I'm getting closer here, I can see my line that I want to go to is in here a little ways. So I'm going to again pull these stitches and tuck this under. I can do it with a fairly easy sweeping motion. I can see my holes in my fabric, so I know how far I want to get it tucked. And now I've got my straight edge here to go along. Again, sliding it off to the edge and taking little stitches. I'm not pulling my thread too tight. We want that just to lay flat. Okay, I'm going to cut this basting stitch, get that thread out of my way, and I'm getting close here to the end of my heart. Right about there is my point that I'm heading for. So I'm going to take a couple more little stitches here, and the goal is to come up at the very point of the heart. Right there's the point of my heart. After I get to this point, what I'm going to do is, there's my last stitch. Let's see, did I go a little far? I did. I went just one stitch too far. So I'm going to take a break here and pull this out. I can always pull a stitch out. And I think right here is about where this last stitch here is truly where the end of my fabric, or my heart, is supposed to be. Alright, what I've got is the thread coming down at the point of my last stitch. I've rethreaded my needle. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to turn my project, and I need to trim this fabric again. So I'm going to trim it and just get some of this out of my way here. Now, to get my perfect point, what I need to do is have as little fabric there as I can. So I'm going to kind of cut this narrow, and I'm going to pull these basting stitches because I have to have room for that point to tuck under. And I'm going to take this fabric and I'm going to tuck it under. Now, you can see this little flag out here. What I'm going to do is take a second and I'm going to snip some of that off. Because that's fabric from what I've tucked in from the other side. So I've got that out of the way. I'm going to finish tucking this. If I pull my stitch down like that, I can see where my end is, and I'm going to take a stitch going down where it came up, and I'm going to go up the other side of my heart. I'm going to continue tucking this under and going up this side of my heart. I'm going to trim more of this off and trim up my heart.
Take a break.
I'm going to take a break here, and when I come back I'm going to have sewed up to where this starts to curve, and then I'll show you how I go around the corner with my applique. Okay, what I wanted to show you as I go around this corner is when you're doing curves or going around circles or rounded edges, if you take and snip, just making little snips right almost to your edge. What it's going to do then is it will aid in turning the corner. It will make you have a smoother, rounder edge on your heart, or any rounded piece that you're adding. And what I'm doing is I'm going to try and get around to the inverted point, because getting points to work are one of the biggest hurdles to get over, especially when you're first learning to applique. So what I'm going to do is finish going around the rounded edge of my heart, and I'm going to come back to you when I get to this point, because I want to show you how to get down into that point and still get your applique stitch in there so that you have a good tacking point there. So I'll be right back with you.
Yeah.
Okay. Where I'm at now is I'm just coming around the corner here, and I'm at the point where I need to snip this so that I can get this to turn under here. So what I wanted to show you when I get to this point, and the reason I save this to the very last is because I don't want any of the threads fraying, because I'm going to get this. These little scissors are embroidery scissors. They have a nice sharp point, and what I'm going to do is go in there and I want to just take one snip down to that point. I don't want to keep using my scissors, because that's going to fray that edge even more. So you want to protect that point. Okay, so I've snipped that, and now I'm going to continue around this corner here using my JAABA under there, and actually my thread from my basting I want to get out of the way so that you can see which thread is which. I'm tucking this under as I go here, following the little holes that are made from the basting and using my JAABA under there to get it exactly where I want it. I'm sliding it off and doing my usual stitch as I go around here. And just about to that point there, so I want to get this all tucked in. There's my holes again for my stitches. And all this time I've got my JAABA under here. And what's so good about having the JAABA up under here, and I'm going to pull these stitches on this side now, because I want to get that thread out of my way here. And I'm trying to tip here to the camera. Normally I would have it tipped in towards me, but I've got that tucked in all the way to the point now, and I'm going to continue making my stitches. And when I get into small areas like this, my stitches have a tendency to get smaller, closer together, especially when I know that I'm not going to have a whole lot of fabric there that's going to be turned under. So, and when I'm doing corners, my stitches also get quite close. And when I'm on a long stretch, that's when my stitches, I have a tendency to let them widen out. Now I'm going to tuck, as you saw there, with my needle, and get that, as much of that fabric out of the way as I can, because I want to know right where that point is. And right there's my point, and I'm going to take just and catch a couple threads there at my point. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to reposition this so that when I take my stitches, I can show you where I'm going. And I don't know if you've noticed, but my JAABA has two bent edges. This is the reason I have this edge bent is because, like, when I'm here at this point, or when I'm at a corner and I want to make sure I have that tucked in, I can slide my project so that it's going here, and I can go straight down where I came up, and I can do a second stitch there. I know my finger kind of gets in the way, but hopefully you can see that little teeny stitch there. That anchors that point. Now I'm ready to slide it off to this edge, and I can go up that edge of my heart. Also, with this project, the whole time I've been using a white thread. Most people would match their threads with their applique. I know Superior has a collection that's pre-wound bobbins of different colors. They work great for doing applique because you can match your project. However, if you look at my stitches, you'll notice that by the time I press this, they're pretty much going to disappear anyways. The fact that I've matched my background fabric also helps. And at the end of this video here, I've had a lot of people say, okay, how are you making your stitch? And it gets blurry. So what I'm going to do is hopefully show you with this one more stitch here how I do this stitch. The whole principle of the stitch is to go down into the background fabric right where you come out. I don't want to angle it, and I know I'm trying to catch this here, but I don't want to angle it, because what it does is it makes my stitch go out here, and then you're going to see the stitch more. What I'm doing is I'm going down where I came up, and I'm running it parallel with where I'm going to come out. I'm sliding it off of my JAABA so that it is coming straight up into that fold. That is my applique stitch. When I pull that tight, if you see that stitch, if you're looking at it, you can see the very edge of it. From the top, it's almost impossible to see. So that's my applique stitch with the JAABA. The JAABA was a tool I designed to help with applique. It can be used with any type of applique, whether it's the freezer paper, the back basting, or any other method that you might have for needle turn applique. What it's there for is it gives you this base, this surface. It's almost like a table to hold your project in. You can bring this right up to you when you're sitting in your easy chair and you've got your feet up. You want to get as comfortable as you can when you're appliquing and doing needlework so your shoulders don't hurt. I've made a left and a right hand version because to me it fits more comfortably in the palm of my hand if I have this larger curve here. It also gives me a longer working area to slide off as I'm going. I also leave my index finger above the JAABA the majority of the time. If I have a big project, it is a little harder to keep my finger up there. But in keeping my finger up there, it lessens the tension and the pressure that I put on the top of my project. So I don't get as much thumb pain or hand pain in holding my project because I'm not having to focus so much pressure on one little teeny area. The JAABA is made out of stainless steel, as I mentioned in my introductory video. I use it for other things. In fact, I hand quilt, and I use that underneath my surface, and I also have had people use it for embroidery so that they don't have to use the hoop. They can keep their project flat and make their stitches. I use it when I baste this on. I have it underneath and I rock my stitches on it. As I mentioned in my introductory video, I use it for binding. And actually when I do my binding is the exact same stitch that I use for my applique. I hope that you will buy the JAABA and try it out. Try it with your favorite technique of applique. And hi, I wanted to thank you for watching my video and let you know that the JAABA can be found on my website at quiltinpeace.com. It's QUILTNPEACE.com. It is also available in a couple of mail order catalogs. Ask for it at your quilt shops so that they start asking their distributors and suppliers for the JAABA. I hope that you enjoyed the video and that you got some idea as to how the JAABA can be useful and a learning tool. It aids those that have never used the JAABA or have never appliqued. It gives them that security under there and that extra work surface to work with. And if you do a lot of applique, I'd encourage you to use it. If you have any questions, you can always contact me at quiltinpeace.com. I have a contact form there. I'm also available at quiltinpeace@gmail.com. And thanks again for your time.